Real Nerds is a proud partner of the Denver Podcast Network. In the shadow of the mountains,
we speak. Coming to you from the X-Axis, it's John of All Trades with your host, John X.
Welcome to this John of All Trades podcast promo. Each Wednesday, I bring you a brand new interview with someone fascinating and ask the question we all ask when we meet someone new. Hey, what do you do? It's fun, informative, and it's the 2017 Westward Reader's Choice Award winner for Best Denver Podcast. iTunes, Stitcher, and johnofalltrades.us.
Oh, hi, podcast listeners. There's many ways you can listen to the Real Nerds podcast. You can subscribe on iTunes. You can also subscribe on Stitcher Radio. You want to send us a Twitter message? You can do that. It's so easy, at Real Nerds. Like us on Facebook, Real Nerds Podcast. You can visit our website, realnerdspodcast.com, where there'll be a lot of articles for you to not only read, but to listen to our previous shows. You can also call us, 720-6nerds5. Thanks for listening, and enjoy the show.
Hi, this is Brian. No, this is my announcer voice, and you're listening to Real Nerds Podcast. Should I do this as my real self? Oh, shucky darn. Hi, this is Brian Cummings. You're listening to Real Nerds Podcast. Okay, do it straight. Hi, this is Brian Cummings, and actually you are listening to Real Nerds Podcast. Send money. And real estate.
Welcome to another Real Nerds Podcast interview from Denver Pop Culture Con 2019. Hope you enjoy.
Welcome to Real Nerds Podcast live from Denver Pop Culture Con 2019. I'm joined by a fairly loony guy named Keith Tucker.
Fairly loony?
Keith, tell me what you do.
What do I
think
do?
It's pretty awesome.
Oh, I sit in chairs and draw pictures. Sometimes I stand. But I've got in little boxes, you know. Basically, I'm a storyboard guy. And there'd be like 3 panels on a page. So I'd be drawing in those little 3 panels. Sorry, I'm being silly. I worked on a few things that people might have heard about. This little show called Animaniacs. And Pinky and the Brain.
Yep.
Tiny Toons.
I saw some Gem and the Holograms in there, too.
Gem and the Holograms, yeah. Gosh. Let's see. Let's go backwards in the Wayback Machine. First stuff I worked on was the first Conan movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger.
And what did you do on it specifically? Like, I mean, storyboard artist, like, did you, like...
Well, actually, I wasn't a board artist at that time.
Okay, so...
I was an effects animator.
Really?
Doing old school 2D pencil and ink hand-drawn animated effects, like the demon sequence in the first Conan movie.
Yeah.
And we animated out the characters, and we made like 3 cells, and with just black, and they were sandwiched between plexiglass and with a light below them.
Right.
So it'd be the outline, there'd be the details, and then I talked them into letting me add muscle tones and everything, so it'd be like Frank Frazetta, and they just said, "Can you do it in time?" And stupidly they believed me, but I turns out I did, and it worked. But it was bottom lit, and when we shot it, they had Vaseline on the lens, and you know. And after that, worked on the second Star Trek film, The Wrath of Khan.
Nice.
Doing base animation for the transporter scenes, and a couple of laser blasts on the Reliant. I helped kill Spock. I pitched in.
Oh, you bastard.
Animated the last 2 warp effects in the film after the Genesis bomb exploded.
Really?
And I animated them by hand. And even when I said to him, I said, a computer could do this easier.
Yeah.
He says, yeah, but you're cheaper than a computer.
And there's a handcraft quality to it. Like you're talking when you're talking Conan and Star Trek 2. Like I've been rewatching Trek lately.
Yeah.
And and I went through Wrath of Khan again, like you do. And one of the things I like is like it's a tactile feel to that world.
Yeah.
It's something you don't get. Like even with the 2D animation and the stuff that goes on with it, like when you phaser blast or transporter animation, like there's something that feels much more real about it than when I like the Abrams movies, but I don't like the transporter effect that much because it kind of seems a little too. It's not unique enough to me.
Yeah.
And so like stuff like what you do kind of like helps add that character depth to it.
Well, we were trying some different effects. I was working for Peter Curran for his Visual Concepts Engineering Company, so they got the blanket credit. And we tried a few different transporters. And I also worked on John Carpenter's The Thing and animated the rocket trail on the opening sequence and helped with the practical effects when the letters appeared. I held a match, you know.
That's the one where like everything kind of, for those who don't know, if you've never seen John Carpenter's The Thing, there's this wonderful, it's one of the most wonderful title sequences where the screen kind of just flashes out and it just starts appearing as John Carpenter's or just The Thing.
Yeah.
And it was done by, if I recall correctly, they had to you lit something underneath it to kind of like only make those letters just appear within it, and then
well, basically the letters were outlined in black. They were clear.
Yeah.
And everything else around it was black, and it was on a fish tank filled with fog, a fog machine.
Yeah.
And on one side you had a big powerful light, and then in front of the letters, hung on two mic stands, was this black flammable paper that Peter Curran held one match, and I held the other match on on the G, and he was on the T, and we lit it on fire, and as it burned, the light came through.
Yeah, pushes through.
And it was filmed that way.
Yeah. Did you have to time that specifically in order to get that effect done correctly? Like, because like it seems like it's something to me that you would have to like get done like the first time.
Well, the camera's rolling while the matches are being lit.
Right on.
And that's why two of us had to light them on each end. If you look real closely, on each side you'll see this little hands with the long stick match, and one of those hands were me.
Oh my gosh, I've got the 4K at home, so now I'm gonna have to go back and look at that.
You can't see it when you freeze the frames as easily as you can see it if you run it in slow.
Just so kind of like stop it down like a few speeds and just
run it a little slow.
So,
but then after that, Peter was trying to get the movie The Right Stuff, and he didn't get it, so we all got laid off, you know. And I went over to Filmation, and they had an apprentice program to learn storyboards. So I was paid to learn storyboards while working on He-Man.
Right on.
And
so with storyboard artists, like, for our listeners, can you explain kind of why a storyboard artist is important to the process? Because they, to me, are some of the like most unsung heroes of this business, because you set a lot of the pace and the tone for what's going to happen coming forward.
Yeah, in live action, it's less important, but it is.
Yeah.
Because, you could shoot whatever and move, you spend a lot of money, playing around.
Some guy named Hitchcock thought it was very important.
And Spielberg.
Yep, Spielberg, too.
The good people know. In animation, I'm sorry, you don't just give a script to an animator and say, draw.
Yeah.
First off, there are a lot of scenes, and somebody has to decide how many scenes, what happens in those scenes, what the rhythm of cutting is, what the staging, what long, wide shot, medium, your two shots, close-ups. Are you ready for your close-up?
So does a typical animated, like 30-minute animated show, like say Animaniacs, when you're or actually, you know what? Let's see He-Man. Actually, He-Man's a good example. Like when you're just having to set out and do that, like how long does it generally take a storyboard to be punched out like efficiently for each individual episode?
Well, back then I think we had like 2 weeks to do an act. an act was sorry about that cough, people. There were 3 board guys on a show, and you'd have act 1, 2, and 3, and that's 7.5 minutes each, which adds up to a 22-minute animation. The rest is all fun commercials.
Yeah, exactly. So you kind of limit it down to that.
Yeah.
So, what are the challenges that kind of come with that job? Whenever I see a documentary about animation, it always kind of feels like you sit in front of the board and do it, but there's got to be challenges that come like from every different angle about like, well, we changed this in the script, so we don't want that anymore, so this is no longer relevant. Or suddenly, like, we need you to storyboard a whole new thing because we have to change the thing completely.
Yeah, there would be rewrites, and we'd have very colorful script pages because every rewrite would be a different color. So you would, you'd be like, "Arr!" or, oh, good, I haven't gotten to that part yet. But yeah, no, it's real important. The importance of the script and the difficulty that you're referring to is you have to determine what is the story point to get across to the audience. And plus you have your personalities, you have your characters, and you tend to want to have what we called a glamour shot. You know, like when I was working on Transformers Generation 1, you would have like this big heroic pose of, Optimus or somebody, or the bad guys, and
so it kind of established the tone of what that particular story would tell in that given shot or in that given
that
scene.
sequence. It's generally you're dealing with a collection of sequences.
Mm-hmm. So within that, do you like? I don't know how it worked back in back at that Filmation era, or even going forward, like up until about the computer era. Were you just kind of like plastering them on the board, or were you kind of like photographing them and kind of presenting it as a film, like to try to give people an idea of what's going on?
Well, I worked in TV. So not features. Features are where you have more time, and you pin it on the board. And I've been in some feature situations where, we pin it up on the board and talk about it and go back and work out some new drawings and then go back and work on the board. In TV, you're giving your script. You have 2 weeks. So
it's a lot more high paced and a little bit more like fast going. Yeah. What's the most challenging, like in your storied career? What is the most challenging aspect? Like was there a moment where, like, somebody kind of like gave you something to do that was like not like within the realm of possibility, or just in general, like what was like the more difficult aspect of the job?
I don't know. It was always fun. I just roll with the punches. I was able to read the script and visualize what would happen in my head. A lot of times I was given leeway to do whatever I wanted. Case in example, I did drew the storyboards for the second season of G.I. Joe, and 3 of us that were on the crew were asked to come up with titles, and we were left to our own devices. And when all was said and done, they went with mine, and I was like, woohoo!
You get a writing credit for that one?
No, it's storyboard. It was set to the music, so I'm listening to the music and planning out each sequence and writing how many words add up before I cut to the next one.
Nice
sequence, and eventually, Doug Ray, Flint yells, "Yo, Joe!" and he points, and then you cut and you break it up based on what scenes you want to have represented. Another case where I was left to my own devices was Earthworm Jim, and when I would ask all these questions. Hey, can I change this? Can I change this? Hey, this would be funnier. And finally, after a couple episodes of them like approving everything, you know what, Keith? Here's the script. It's all yours. You don't have to ask us to change anything. We trust and like what you're doing, so have fun.
So, what was the funnest show, or the funnest is not a word. What was the most fun
Funnest.
show to... You know what? I'm going to make it a word.
Fun, silly willy.
What was the most enjoyable show to work on in the time that you've been doing this? Because we've gone through the gamut of like Animaniacs, Earthworm Jim. There's got to be one was there one that stood out, or were they all just like a fun blast to work on?
They were all a fun blast to work on. I mean, when I was at Disney on DuckTales, Rescue Rangers, Tailspin, I had a blast. And then Space Monkeys, that was one.
Space Monkeys, which one's that one?
Oh, you must look them up. That's all I can say. The guy who was on Babylon 5 that played Garibaldi was the lead actor. He's no longer with us, but he was the lead voice character in Space Monkeys, and a friend of mine produced it in his own studio. And but no, they're all. I loved when I was working on Spider-Man or X-Men or G.I. Joe or Transformers. Probably the highlight of my career is Pinky and the Brain and Animaniacs, in that order.
I mean, it's more than I've ever accomplished in my life. But what I was gonna say is like
I'm old.
Yeah, but it's not over for you. You still got stuff going on, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Or at least you keep going.
I'm not dead yet.
What do you? He's not dead. No. Or I could go Obi-Wan Kenobi with it. No, he's not dead. No, not yet.
I was thinking Monty Python.
What do you have like coming up currently or in the future? Like what keeps you going within this industry?
I'm doing a lot of personal work. I'm retired.
Okay.
I'm in my mid-60s, and I just like doing what I want to do.
Right on.
And which is what I liked doing when people let me loose.
Right on.
So it's I'm working on some projects I can't discuss, but I've done some small commercials. People have asked me to do stuff, and
So you keep it going all these years later too.
Yeah.
So, well, that's all anybody can ask for is to keep that thing going and never stop.
They'll probably find me at the drawing board.
Well, Keith, before you go, people can find out.
I'm not dead yet.
People can find out more about you on your website, TuckerTunes.com.
TuckerTunes.com.
Yeah,
yes.
It's TOONS.
Yeah, not tunes like you would sing. Tunes like you would draw.
Yeah. And they can find more information about you and go check out his work. Like, if you could find Animaniacs, Pinky and the Brain, Earthworm Jim, any of that stuff, it's worth watching, and he's a big contributor to it. Keith, thank you so much for sitting down and chatting with us.
Certainly.
This has been Real Nerds Podcast live from Denver Pop Culture Con, talking to Keith Tucker. We're signing off.
Signing off.
This has been another Real Nerds Podcast interview from Denver Pop Culture Con 2019. See you next year.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Real Nerds Podcast. Real Nerds Podcast is a production of Nebulous Visions Multimedia. Thank you to Sparks Mandrill and Plan 9 Studios for our kick-ass theme song. Also, if you're in the Denver area and you're looking for a cool place to see movies, we see them at the Alamo Draft House in Littleton and now also in Sloan's Lake. Thank you to Colorado Coins, Cards, and Comics for supplying us with all our comic needs, especially you, Andrew. You know who you are. And a big shout out to James's mom. I'm giving you an electronic hug that you can feel through the airwaves. Thanks for listening, and have a nice day.